I have made a list of songs, which initially started off as one set, a CD length list of songs. Then that became two, and that became three. Eventually it became four. And then after I finished tweaking the four, I added a fifth one. And it's not five, it's really four plus one. Because the first four are all five are 13 tracks long. And originally the first four, they were all an hour and 16 minutes, all within about 30 seconds of each other. Because as I was building it, I kept the structure of what I was creating evolved as I was making it. I did not set out to make the version that I ended up with. It just sort of became that on its own. But the fifth one is just more added on after the fact. Okay, so these four lists all have 13, and that is because 4 times 13 is 52, and 52 is how many weeks there are in a year. And so instead of numbering them as such, I labeled them all with the weeks of the year, starting with March 1st, since that's the beginning of the Timaean year. And I put an instrumental track in the middle, number 7, of all 5 of these. And then on the weeks that corresponded, the 8 days of sacrifice, as I call it, of the Druid calendar, I made them all female. And because it's 52 divided into 4, these equal the 4 seasons. And so I named them after the stars that align with the beginning of those seasons. So the first is called Delta Pisceum and equates to the spring equinox, March 19th. And the CD relates to air, which is the suit of cards of spades or swords. Number 1, March 1st. This is a song called Seer by the band Witch from the album Witch in 2006. And this, I think, is a great opener here as it was on their album. The song essentially represents the Fool card in the tarot deck, the beginning of the journey ahead. The crystal ball it mentions is for looking into one's self, much the same as Janus looked forward and back in the new year. Hence the old man and the young man are the same. Or rather, you could say the future is now, and now is the future. Number 2, the second week of March. This is New World Order by Megadeth from the album Hidden Treasures in 95. It was also on the Demon Knight soundtrack. It is a song about the global elite taking control of the world. It represents the first layer of conspiratorial thinking. Written back in the 90s, they re-recorded it for the album 13 in 2011. It talks about privacy and personal autonomy being taken away, where he says all rights will be denied, without the mark you shall die. It's a great track. A lot of their later stuff was political or conspiratorial in some way.
Where has the apostles gone? Joining hands with wicked ones. need a day, a must have, and you shall pay. Humans flesh leaves a mind, just a body, the last murder dies.
Number 3, the third week of March. This song is called The Lake by Bathory from the 1996 album Blood on Ice. This song is part of a concept album that tells a story which is a mishmash of Nordic mythological stories. His village is destroyed and he is exiled to the wilderness of the far north, where he meets a mystic, an old man who is basically Odin, and he gets a magical sword similar to Tyrfing. He becomes invisible, he gains wisdom from the lake, which is what this song is about. This is taken from the story of Mimir's Well. He's guided by ravens like Odin, has a sacred horse like Odin. All these things symbolize his growth in consciousness, similar to Inanna's descent into the underworld. He rides north and enters the realm of the dead, Helheim, and slays a monster there, freeing the souls. The end of his journey is a sort of cosmic liberation or recalibration. It's the regular hero's journey told through the lens of Nordic folklore. Enlightenment came through losing his eyesight at the lake like Odin did at the world tree Yggdrasil. One can take this as a broken man being reshaped into a legend through hardship and believing he has purpose, a destiny. The Lake is just my favorite track from the album, so that's the one I included, but the album itself is my favorite one from Bathory. Representing the fourth week of March, The Host of the Seraphim by Dead Can Dance from the 1988 album The Serpent's Egg. This represents Ostara. It has no lyrics, but it does have female vocal. I'm not sure what it means or represents, but I included it here for the purpose of filling in the space allocated to Ostara. And originally I had something else here. I forget what it was now, but I've replaced it with this one. Number 5, fifth week of March. This is Other Land from the 2006 album A Twist in the Myth by Blind Guardian. Other Land is based on Tad Williams' novels, a series of the same name. It contemplates crossing into alternate realities, search for truth beyond ordinary existence. It explores identity, illusion, and the desire to transcend one's limitations. It's another world, literal or mental, where the narrator withdraws from a painful or unsatisfying reality. A loss of certainty where dreams, memories, and perception become indistinguishable. Longing for transcendence, but with an undercurrent that this escape may be unstable or illusory. A tension between reality versus inner fantasy, asking whether retreating into other worlds is salvation or self-deception. They cannot tell what is real and what is illusion, and they are just pawns in the machinations of the powers that be. The whole time they are trying to find their way out of the illusory world, and in the end they never do. Number 6. This is the first week of April. This is the song Born Again by Black Sabbath from the 1983 album Born Again. Some may consider this to be a strange pick from Black Sabbath. I almost went with Megalomania from the Ozzy era. I would say it's a song about someone being forced to undergo an initiation into the occult or secret society. Everything is wrong, but they must pretend it is better somehow. The final lines, think like a hunter and search for your prey, is the sociopathic mentality of the elite. The lines that sum up the point, I think, are when it says, the thrust of my challenge is aimed at the heart of mutant gods who think that we're all the same. They're controlling our minds and they use us for fortune and fame. Those lines always stuck out to me. It seems to be saying that success isn't really better, it's just different. Sort of the Gilded Cage concept.
Look at this prince of evil, fighting for your mind, fighting on priests of shame. Softly brushing your leaves as we rise when we challenge you. Born again, you're born again.
Number 7, representing the second week of April, called Ephemeral by the band Pelican, from the 2009 album What We All Come to Need. As an instrumental, its meaning is open, but the title suggests impermanence. The gradual rise and fall of the music evokes fleeting moments, changing landscapes, and the acceptance of transience. Number 8, the third week of April. This is Nocturnus by Jason Newsted from the 2013 album Heavy Metal Music. This song can be taken a couple of ways. The first is the literal sense, where Nocturnus is a sort of Lovecraftian underground monster resenting the human infestation above him. Secondly, it can be taken as a metaphor for the underground culture itself, preferring to stay hidden and unseen in the underbelly of it. It reminds me of Metallica's song, The Thing That Should Not Be. Things not dead, eternal lie. In stranger eons, death may die. And it also reminds me a bit of Danzig's song, Underbelly of the Beast. Down in the belly of the beast I lie. All I save is my pain.
To home, my piece of the world where no other man goes. I
Number 9 is the 4th week of April. This is Shadows of the Damned by Akira Yamaoka with the band The Damned from the 2011 soundtrack of the game Shadows of the Damned. This is a song about a man fighting through hordes of demons in hell to save his girlfriend from the king of the underworld, which is what the game is about. So it's just narrating the events of the game, basically, in shorthand. Number 10, first week of May, which equates to Beltane, and so this is Eye of Shiva, Therion from the 1998 album Woven. It draws on Hindu symbolism, with Shiva's eye representing destruction as a necessary precursor to renewal. The song reflects esoteric themes of cosmic cycles, spiritual awakening, and transformative fire. I could be wrong, but I think they are comparing the Eye of Shiva to the spiral of the Milky Way galaxy. Or you could say the Ouroboros itself. Bom Bom Shiva is an exclamation associated with the worship of Shiva, especially among ascetics. It doesn't have a direct dictionary meaning, but functions like a sacred invocation or cry of devotion. Shankara means the one who brings auspiciousness, and is one of Shiva's best known names. Rudra is an ancient Vedic name for Shiva, associated with fierce, storm-like, and transformative aspects. There's the line Shiva Vamachara, which means Shiva of the left-hand path. Vamachara literally means left-hand path. In Hindu Tantra, it refers to a class of esoteric spiritual practices that deliberately transgress conventional social or ritual norms. It's a real religious and philosophical term, not an invention. Kala Tattva. Kala is time, and can also imply death or destiny because time ultimately consumes all things. Tattva means principle or essence or fundamental reality. So Kala Tattva can be understood as the principle of time or fundamental reality of time. While this exact two-word phrase is not a famous mantra, both words are genuine Sanskrit philosophical terms. In traditions centered on Shiva, time, Kala, is deeply significant because Shiva is often regarded as transcending or governing time. 11, second week of May. The Emerald Law by the collaborative project Probot with Scott Wino as the vocalist from the 2004 album Probot. This is one of my favorite songs and has been ever since it came out. I made a video of this song with a bunch of graphics showing what it's talking about. It is a jumble of esoteric things, hermeticism, conspiracy theories, Masonic imagery, that sort of thing. The name Emerald Law itself is a reference to the Tablets of Hermes. It references the second layer of 3 of conspiratorial logic. It also talks about the solar logos. It opens by saying, "As above, so below." It's a famous Masonic quote. Edgar Cayce predicted the Hall of Records underneath the paws of the Sphinx. The falcon he mentions is Horus, and the scribe is Thoth. Thoth is Hermes, who wrote the Emerald Law. After death, the heart was weighed against the feather of Ma'at, feather of truth, to judge the souls if they were warranted admission to the field of reeds in the afterlife. When it says Horus glides to the nether realm, it's talking about Horus and the Duat, the land of the dead. The bloodline refers to the supposed lineage of Christ from Bacon's book Holy Blood, Holy Grail, and Gardner's book Bloodline of the Holy Grail. And it ends by evoking imagery of the solar logos, how the sun is a symbol of the creative force of the gods of the cosmos.
I do not die, but awaken from the dream I live. As above, so below, will be revealed. The truth be known, questions, pieces strewn, shrouded answers hewn. With love, so grow, beneath these balls the tablets grow. Behold, a falcon, so raise the horizon. A great scribe, let us see your runes of mystery. Serpent shares your name, a keeper of the emerald flame. Prevail, law of 3, the goddess guide humanity. He weighs your heart, a life pure, a life false, and they learn the soul, deceived by false words, and their greed, and their lies, cause them to be blind. And so, become, prevail the law of one, and so become the falcon, and so become the falcon.
Number 12, the third week of May. This Big Hush by Shriekback from the 1985 album Oil and Gold. It was used in the movie Manhunter, which is where I know it from. This is a song about longing, desire, and being intimate with someone. In Manhunter, it was used in a scene of intimacy between 2 people who had felt alienated until finding each other.
Is there fire in the sky? Is there a moon up there? Is anything to light now? This darkness is what I hear. river of desire. The ashes and the fire turn in this night inside, and the light from you.
Number 13, fourth week of May, Annihilate the Sparrow by the band Red Sparrows from the 2006 album Every Red Heart. This is an instrumental track, and I tended to put instrumentals at the end of all of these. Not sure if the track means anything, but the album, the central theme of the album is the sun. The sun is a symbol on the cover of the album. And so throughout all of these 5 lists, I have kept a general theme of solar imagery and astronomical concepts that is running throughout the list. The total runtime of the first tape is 1 hour and 18 minutes. list is named Alpha Orionis, corresponding to the summer solstice on June 21st, relates to the element of fire, and the card suits of wands and clubs. Number 1 represents the first week of June, is 70,000 Sorrows by the band Warlord on the 2013 album Holy Empire. This song depicts the human soul as a battleground between the forces of good and evil, where Christ overcomes through the cross, and then having 70,000 slain from the enemy forces by the sword of the Lord. Number 2, representing the second week of June, is Dive In Deep by a somewhat obscure band called Red Temple Spirits from their 1989 album Leaving for Lhasa. This song is either about dying and the spirit ascending into the cosmos, or disembodied astral travel. I can see it both ways. I always took this to be more of a soul's journey, but when I looked up the lyrics for the song, I never noticed in listening to the track itself, but at the end he repeats the word LSD several times, very low in the mix. And I never heard that myself when listening to it, but it is there, and by putting LSD into it, it changes it, which is why I say it's also about astral travel. But without that, I would say it represents the soul ascending, leaving the body and ascending.
Body slowly dissolving in a molecular screen.
Number 3 represents the third week of June. This is Thor, the Powerhead. This is done by Therion on the 1999 album Crowning of Atlantis, but it's a cover of a song by Manowar from the 1984 album Sign of the Hammer. Thor is loosely equivalent to Zeus and Yahweh, and this is another cosmic entry on the list. Thor being god of the storms, god of the sky. Number 4, representing the fourth week of June, is On the Sixth Moon by Rituals of the Oak from their 2012 album Come Taste Our Doom. This, of course, represents Litha, the midsummer, summer solstice. That's why I put On the Sixth Moon here, because it is the sixth month. Even though in the Timaean calendar, the 6th month would be in September, which would more closely relate to fall equinox, but not exactly because the Timaean months are different. By the time you get down to this point in the year, they are significantly offset from the Gregorian months. So I couldn't really put it there in the 6th Timaean month. I had to put it here in the 6th Gregorian month, which is fine. Because it's divided into 4 parts, I just equated this to the Gregorian months because 12 is divisible by 4 when the 13 Timaean months are not. So even though I think the 13-month calendar is superior to the 12-month calendar, at least you can divide 12 by 4 and divide the year according to the 4 seasons like I've done here. This is a song about witches participating in witchy things. A lunar rite in the 6th month. There's a line in it where she says, "Our lips are moist with the wine of life," which of course is blood. And it reminds me of the Iron Maiden song Strange World, which has the line, "Shades of green, grasses entwine. The girls are drinking plasma wine." They have another song on the same album from 1980, which references the all-seeing eye, which is long before the internet and long before everyone and their dog knew about the all-seeing eye symbol. Number 5 represents the 5th week of June. This is Rebellion in Dreamland by Gamma Ray from the 1995 album Land of the Free. And this is a story of a fictional world overtaken by tyranny and a subsequent rebellion against it. Dreamland works on 2 levels. On one, it is a fantasy of a perfected society that could never actually exist. And it's also a metaphor for the modern world. But I think more interesting is the idea that it could be in the human psyche itself. Dreamland suggests a people that are dreaming. Or, like Carlin said, they call it the American dream because you have to be asleep to believe it. We are not on Earth to vote and drive cars and pay bills. We are here to progress the evolution of our soul and the collective soul of humanity. So I see this as more of personal autonomy than societal rebellion, even though it could mean that as well. These songs, many songs, have multiple meanings. They don't have to be taken one way exclusively. Because it is art, and it can be taken in many different ways, by different people, different points of view. None of them are mutually exclusive. On one hand, it is often objective, has an objective meaning put into it by the creator. But on the other hand, as art, it is also subjective in how each individual person can perceive it from their perspective. Regardless of what is going on in the world outside of our control, we still have an obligation to ourselves to build ourselves up and be the best that we can be, mentally, physically, and spiritually. That is what Timaeanism is about, after all. Number 6 is the first week of July. And this is The Mindless Ones by Monster Magnet. However, I chose the remade version, the re-recorded version. Originally it was on the 2010 album Mastermind, but then they made an album in 2015 called Cobras and Fire, which was a re-recording of the tracks for Mastermind. And this is a Lovecraftian style story about cosmic forces, the mindless ones, set against Earth. The three Vishanti fight against the evil Dormammu. You kind of have to understand cosmicism to get this song, otherwise it won't really mean anything to you. In Lovecraft, there were the old ones who were godlike, but on a human scale, and then the outer gods, who were on a truly cosmic scale. After Lovecraft, Derleth made the terms, the Elder Gods and the Ancient Ones. Elder Gods were protectors of cosmic order, while the Old Ones, or Ancient Ones, were destructors. Number 7 is the second week of July. This is Love Song by Akira Yamaoka on the 2001 album Silent Hill 2 soundtrack, and every track on there was instrumental. I did not know which one to include. I knew I wanted to include one of his, and I was deciding between something from the second, third, and fourth games soundtracks, which are all great, and I really couldn't decide very well. I ended up going with this one, although it kind of feels a bit out of place, as most of these tracks. These are kind of, this list overall, all the 5 lists are, they have, I would say metal is sort of the backbone of it, the skeleton of it, but it has music from sort of all different genres, and this one certainly is not metal. I don't know what you would call it. It's a nice bit of music, but I'm not sure it fits on the album. I don't know which one I should have put from Akira. I ended up having 3, actually. I already had one I mentioned on the first tape, the first list. That was from a separate game series. It's only one, it's not a series, it's just a game, Shadows of the Damned. But Akira did the soundtrack for that as well. And then here it's from Silent Hill, which is the one he's most known for. And I went with something off 2 because I felt that was more authentic to me, since Silent Hill 2 has always been a big... that story's always been a lot to me, and I know it very well. And so that was the one I went with here. But there were several from that album I could have picked. Overdose Delusion or Promise. But I went with Love Song. I don't really know why, but that's the one I went with. Number 8, representing the third week of July, is The Killing of the Sun by Candlemass. Candlemass is also the same as Imbolc, which is in February. This is from the 2012 album Psalms for the Dead. This is pretty much just, it's an obvious indictment against the hubris of mankind in the modern world, essentially. I will say, I'm picking these songs based on the lyrical content and what I feel. The premise that I started off with, when I thought it would just be one list, the idea was a collection of songs that I thought were very intelligent, very thoughtful, deep lyrics. And so as I expanded the list, I looked in all these different bands, all my favorite bands, for what I thought was the one particular track that had the deepest or most thought-provoking lyrics. And so that's the general theme of how they all tie together. But sometimes that leads to tracks that are not necessarily their best in terms of music, musical composition. And I would say that's true here, where Candlemass is capable of a lot better musical arrangements than we have in this track here. Which, when I was going over their list, I was going over their albums, and I was trying to pick out which one I thought was the best one to include, and I chose this one, but I was on the fence about it because it's not their best musically. If you listen to it, for whatever reason, I don't know why, they just sort of made it a simpler, it's just more a repetitive sort of a riff, and it's not really anything elaborate. And a bunch of their other songs are, and so I don't really know why they made this one so simple, but I chose it for the lyrics, and that's why it is the way it is.
We see the atom, the crates of Jupiter, a cure for cancer. Science is the word. Watch its progress when the streets of London burn. Who are we fooling? The dance of Lucifer. Race symptoms of the evolution. We're fresh out of the caves. Bow and arrow, fangs and fur, Neanderthals and cars. We burn the flame and tame the earth. Looked up to the stars. Who stopped the clock? Who threw the rock? The killing of the sun. The killing of the sun. The killing of the sun. The killing of the sun.
Number 9, representing the fourth week of July. This is Someone Else by Queensryche from the 1994 album Promised Land. However, as is usual with me, I always gravitate towards the most unusual thing, or the least common thing, and I don't know why it is, but I always just gravitate towards things that are less known or less appreciated. And that was another theme, another thing I wanted to do here was incorporate stuff that's not very well known. Going off into the wilderness, so to speak, mining for gold, as opposed to just sticking to well-known bands. I like the sort of esoteric nature of that. Anyway, so I was going to say this originally was recorded for the album Promised Land, but then it was re-recorded in 2000 for their Greatest Hits album, and I chose I like the Greatest Hits version better. That's the one I always listen to. What's called the full band version. Now, this was always been one of my favorite songs, and because I had a near-death experience when I was young, and to me, when I hear this song, it is talking about someone having a near-death experience or just dying. But the lyrics are so specific, I feel like it was written by someone who has had that experience. But you never hear anyone say that. I have not found anyone to say this. I'm like the only one that says this, that this album is about death and dying and crossing over to the other side. The imagery itself is not about death per se. He's using ocean iconography. But in terms of how you see yourself from the other side, looking back at the life you had just lived, it fits very well. You literally feel like the person you're looking at, the person you were. When you wake up on the other side, into your full, regular, real consciousness, and you realize that the person you were and the personality that you lived under and all the decisions you made were based on that personality, it is like somebody else. The life that you have now is not the real you. It is a version of yourself you are living under in this lifetime. And that will vanish when you die, and you will be your true self. And when you are shown your life, you look back at it, it will literally look like somebody else. And in my experience, when I died, I saw who I was, and it was embarrassing. I felt like, and I feel like this would be everybody. This is not just me, but it's everybody. You look back, you're shown who you were and how you lived, and you feel like an idiot. The person you lived as was an idiot. Whoever you are, I don't care who you are. That's what it's going to be like. You're going to think you were a fool, and you will think it's somebody else. Like, this is not me. This person was drunk their whole life and just kept making stupid decisions. This is my experience with that. And so ever since then, I have done my best to not be a stupid person, not be drunk, so to speak. I feel like everybody's inebriated. That's the best way I could describe. I have long tried to find proper words to describe what they look like from the other side, from our greater consciousness, our true self. When you look back at who you were, the best way I could describe it is that we are drunk. That's the best way to describe it. I have yet to think of a better way, and it's been 30 years. So that apparently is just the best association I can think of, the best analogy I can think of to what people are like. Now, see, I have kept that awareness from when I was a child and I died and I saw myself as that person. And I was just a kid at the time. So, I mean, I didn't have any kind of crazy life that I had lived. I wasn't, I hadn't gone off into the world yet, and I had not become any kind of crazy person doing all these things that you would think I would be ashamed for. That wasn't it at all. That was irrelevant. Like, you no matter who you are, no matter what you lived like, you're still going to feel this way when you die. No matter how well you thought you lived or how smart you thought you were, that's what it's going to be like, because you're going to be a different person at that point. And I've kept a part of that with me. And so now, ever since then, when I look at the world, I just see crazy people. I see dumb people who don't even know who they are. They have no greater awareness of themselves. They're just living in the moment, reactively. They're reacting to stimulus in the world. They're not actually initiating thought with their head, with their true self. They're not deliberately thinking about what's going on. They're just reacting like animals to the world around them. And if there's anything I can say about the near-death experience, is that it snaps you out of that reactive mindset. And although I won't say that I have retained my true consciousness, because I was put back into my body, and so I've gone back into that life to some extent, but I've tried as best I can to retain that kind of awareness, the overall greater awareness of the world, looking at it from a higher viewpoint, looking down at all of it together, not just at whatever your little particular part is that you are in, that you're involved in at the time. If only people could have like this greater scope, just a higher awareness of things. I don't know how to describe it. It's just more of a top-down perspective than a bottom-up perspective, because everyone looks at the cosmos, they look at creation from inside their own mind, out through their own eyes. And from that perspective, from that viewpoint, it's very myopic and egocentric. And their worldview is based on them. It's relative to them. That's everyone's base default position. And when you die, you are kicked out of that egocentric worldview. And it's a worldview of greater than yourself, greater than your life. What does the world look like from outside human perspective? I've always thought of it as God's perspective. I've tried to have, since I was a teenager, I've tried to look at the world from what I call God's perspective. This top-down, mile-high view of the world. People are just caught in their little lives, and they cannot think beyond themselves and the little worlds or little routines, the bills they're trying to pay, and all this nonsense of humanity. They just can't get out of this mindset of mediocrity, and it's sad. Anyway, I'm talking more about that than the song. Let me get back to it. So this moment of death changed my life, and I really haven't ever been the same since. And so when you have that experience, you come back and you bring a part of that experience with you back into your life. And I feel like that's what this song is talking about. Since I've always felt sort of half alive and half dead, but part of me still in the afterlife. It kind of reminds me of a line from one of the Assassin's Creed games. Assassin's Creed's my favorite franchise. I played all the games. And in AC Revelation, there's a character called Yusuf. Tells Ezio that he looks like he's late for his own funeral. And Ezio replied saying, yes, by about 25 years. And that's about how I have always felt. So this song is about someone contemplating mortality who has already died, looking back on his life. The crossroads, in this case the sea, the shoreline, is a liminal space between the two worlds. It's a metaphor in the occult world, like mirrors or any kind of scrying device, crystal ball, like televisions or the modern day crystal ball. The little iPhones are the black mirror, the scrying mirror. These are all crossroads, liminal spaces. One such crossroads is said to be shorelines. And so that's the metaphor he's using in the song. So these are dividing lines between our world and the other side, between the living and the dead. So standing at the crossroads and looking back is to look back into the material world. To me, this is very clear, and I don't see why no one else gets it. So he's talking about standing at the crossroads, he's talking about reaching out for eternity, but he's looking back and he sees someone else, not him. If you listen to the words, the lyrics of this song, to me it clearly spells out someone who has had some kind of a death experience. Any kind of venture into liminality, breaching the veil, will do this to you.
Chains are over mine, dragging me towards my fate. Planned for me long ago. I played by all their rules, went to their right schools. Who was I to question rise the changes. I feel like I did before the magic walked in, and the baptism of stains began. Sacrifice, they always said.
Number 10, representing the first week of August, which is Lughnasadh. And this is One More Soul to the Call. This is by Akira and Mary Elizabeth doing the vocals. Now, originally I had this on the third tape, but then I realized I had another track on there that was also talking about the same thing this one is talking about. And so I switched it to this album, because I didn't want two of the same things. They were actually, one was 9 and one was 10. And so I switched the two 10s between the two albums and put it here, so I wouldn't have two on the same album talking about the same thing. But this is One More Soul to the Call, and it's from the 2008 Silent Hill Homecoming soundtrack. And that game was about human sacrifice, what this song is about. Where a town known as Shepherd's Glen had the founding families, the 4 founding families, made a pact with demons, and to hold up their end of the bargain, they had to sacrifice one of their children each generation. And so that's what this song is about. And I put it on here, and I like it because that's what really goes on. And the unseen, unspoken of world of the occult elite who run the planet, basically, run the civilized world, do this sort of thing. And a lot of people in the past years have been talking about child sex trafficking, but really what that boils down to is child sacrifice. And they abuse them, they torture them, and they do all kinds of things to them to work up fear and adrenaline in the blood, which equates to what they call adrenochrome, which is what they need from the blood. So they have to basically terrify them and abuse them to build up all this emotional state, which equates to hormones in the blood that are produced from these states of fear. Interestingly, I have a song on the last tape, number 5, by the band Sisters of Mercy from the 80s. And Sisters of Mercy actually had a track. It was sort of an unreleased track. They put out 3 albums. Sisters of Mercy, they put out 3 albums. And then later they put out 2 more. One was a greatest hits collection, which I think were re-recorded tracks from the 3 albums, put out as a greatest hits collection, but they were extended versions. And then they put out another tape, which was a collection of unreleased tracks. And on this album there was one song simply called Adrenochrome. And again, this is like 1990. This is way before the internet and way before anybody knew about this kind of thing. So how these guys knew about adrenochrome in the 80s kind of tells me they had to be a part of it. Anyway, so this is One More Soul to the Call.
You're here, you're gone, it's not fair, I'm lost, you're gone, your fear, was it worth the price? Pray for the children you lost
Number 11, representing the second week of August, this is Solar Benediction by the band Shrine Builder. Really, it's just Scott Wino's band. He called it Shrine Builder at the time. They only had one album. It's from 2009. This song is about the progression of the soul, upward from the human body to the cosmos. And it starts off by talking about self-immolation as a sacrifice, purifying the will of man, similar to Metallica's song Purify, also similar to Metallica's song You Must Burn from 72 Seasons. The three become one, as in the Emerald Law, the law of three, the law of one. And the material world of consciousness is a waste of spiritual effort and abandoning rigid dogmas and concepts. Number 12. This represents the third week of August. It is called Spirit by The Dead Can Dance, the 1991 album A Passage in Time. To me, this is a song about general human perseverance. It can be understood as an invitation to reconnect with a deeper level of consciousness, one that recognizes the sacredness of life and humanity's place within nature and the cosmic order. It expresses a universal search of higher-minded people for transcendence, belonging, and inner transformation.
The veins in our arms still stand up. The spirit of life I keep living on.
Number 13, this represents the 4th week of August, is Not Unlike the Waves by Agalloch from the 2006 album Against the Grain. And it is a poetic way to describe the aurora borealis in terms of Norse mythology. Here they are referred to as Solstafir, even though that is the Icelandic word for sun rays coming through the clouds. Heidrun is the goat that gives mead to the slain soldiers in Valhalla. The total for this album is 1 hour and 15 minutes.